One of the many amazing things about Obsidian is the ability to pretty much customize it to any look and feel that you like. And one of those custom themes is sort of taking the Obsidian community by storm, and that's Andy Matuschak Mode, which is modeled after Andy's really impressive personal knowledge management system. And the creator of that theme, the creator of that custom theme within Obsidian, Gordon Pedersen, is our guest tonight. And Gordon is not only a design wizard, but Gordon is also one of the moderators inside Obsidian, helping users to use the app and help them address issues and other things that they have with the app. And Gordon, I've wanted to meet you for a long time, ever since I saw Andy's Mode and saw your work in Obsidian. So it's really a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So, and it's also, we have a 15-hour time difference between us. So I say tonight, it's morning for your time. So thank you for joining this morning for you. And what turns out to be your daughter's birthday. So even more special that you're joining us on this special day. So where I'd love to start is you've written about, I read a little on your blog, you've written about personal knowledge management. It's been, something, an interest of yours for a while. And you also like to write. Tell me, how did you come to Obsidian in the first place? Before we dive in and see, and you're going to share your screen and show us all this really cool stuff and how you built Andy's Mode. But before we get there, just could you talk a little bit about how did you discover Obsidian? How did you find it? And what led you to getting started with it?
Yeah, so, like you said, I've always liked to write, but I've always never done enough of it. I'm in software development, and the writing you do in software development is all documentation, it's all boring. So I like writing, I just never really did it. I did journaling when I was in high school, and then sort of dropped off that. And also I've been having issues with my memory, like trying to remember things, and so I was looking for ways to help me remember stuff. I was looking into bullet journaling for a while, didn't really do much of that. I discovered the whole building a second brain kind of thing, and I thought this is the direction I want to go in, sort of touching on the personal knowledge management stuff for the first time. I found Notion when it was pretty new.
Yep.
Got straight into that, loved that. That was like the best thing ever. This was going to be the future of all my knowledge was going to go in this thing. It was going to be great. Then I realized that I was just building stuff and not actually putting anything in there. I still wasn't doing the writing, just doing the building. Not long after that, I discovered Roam for the first time, which also was really new at the time. Got into that, liked having the daily note thing, liked the idea that I could just link everything together and not have to build any sort of structure around it. I thought that was great, but there was something about it that wasn't quite working for me, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. So I kept looking around, couldn't find anything that I liked. Fiddled with RemNote for a bit, which is very much like Roam, but with spaced repetition. And then decided I was probably going to end up building my own. Did a bit more looking around. I stumbled across Andy's notes and started reading about knowledge management. And I really liked the interface he had with the cards going side to side. And I thought, that's great. I'm going to build something like that. Started just playing around with some code, but didn't get very far. And then found Obsidian, which again was pretty new at the time. And quickly realized that this is already what I was thinking of building to a degree. And the direction that they were heading in seemed exactly like where I was going to go with my thing. And I'm like, why am I building my own thing when it already exists? So I got really involved in the community, jumped right in, started using the app, making notes. Still not writing as much as I would like to, but getting there. And I think having that base in Obsidian is helping me a lot, sort of get everything sorted. The fact it's all marked down means if for some reason I don't like it anymore or it dies or whatever, then I can just, doesn't matter, my notes are still there, so it's fine.
All portable. Yeah.
Yep. I can take them wherever I want, do whatever I want with them.
And that is one of the great things about Obsidian is that everything is local. So I had a very similar path as you did, to the point where I too started building my own PKM, because for years and years I knew exactly what I wanted from. I wanted this bit from here, this other bit from here, this other thing from this, and I was going to bring it all together and do that, and then add the pieces that I wanted. I actually started building it, and it had it functional, where I was actually using it and putting notes in. And a point that you made earlier that I think is really important, and Nick and I talked about this when he and I, when we talked about the platform, the LYT platform that he built, and that idea of doing your own thinking. And obviously, Andy's notes, that's kind of one of the core things. And Andy writes quite a bit on, it seems that a lot of people in the knowledge management space are talking about knowledge management. And it's sort of meta. There's a lot of meta activity going on, but you don't see a lot of what's actually being produced and the linking and the creativity that's coming from that, and that whole idea of doing your own thinking and what Andy really promotes really well. And so I think that a tool or a platform like Obsidian enables the focus to be much more on creating your stuff and building from it. And like you, I got to a point where I said, every change that I make, this is, somewhat painful. And wow, look at how rapidly Obsidian is developing. And for me, not only that, and you obviously were one of the contributors there, I thought the community was exceptional. That, I had also been an early user in Notion. I'd been an early user in Rome, and it's just really smart people in both of those communities and great platforms. But there's something about the Obsidian community that felt so warm, so welcoming, so kind of like embracing, that just made it feel like just really comfortable. Like I enjoy being here and posting and asking questions and offering feedback where I could help somebody out. And it just felt really warm and welcoming. And so thank you as one of the early moderators for being part of that. But that's one of the things that led me to really Obsidian was the quality of the platform, but especially the ecosystem of what they have, what it's become.
Yeah. No, that's part of what drew me into, like, I've been very disenfranchised in recent years with the internet as a whole. There's a lot of negative voices out there that are pretty loud and completely disconnecting from most social networks and just not bothering with it. And then, like, even with something like Notion, I joined the Notion community early on too, and that was nice and whatever. But when that started getting big, it started getting not negative, but more like less welcoming. Like it was just more clinical,
corporate.
More corporate. That's probably the best word for it.
For sure.
It was more corporate. And
you know what? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah. And then, but the Obsidian community is very, very hands-on, do-it-yourself kind of people. Like everyone in there just wants to get in and do their thing and help everyone else out in the process.
And inspire one another. You sort of see, like, I remember when Snip a Note or Snip a Graph, whatever channel was opened up in the Discord forum for showcasing your graph or your note, Snip a Note and show your graph. That when you saw that, you couldn't help but think, "Ooh, I want a note like that," or "I want to structure this way." Or how do they do that? And reaching out and sort of kind of asking for that. Yeah, it's just really neat. But it's a great point that you bring up, and I want to get into. I don't want to belabor getting to your stuff too much, but I do think that's a really important point about Obsidian. That as it scales, keeping that warmth and that comfort level for everyone that's there. And that's a fine line to walk, because, when you scale and you have a lot more users and you have a lot more input and you have a lot more, stuff to manage, it becomes more challenging. And that's why I also think the moderators and the people who are not just the developers, and of course the developers behind Obsidian are just really quality people with really good character, but the forum moderators as well, that you sort of have a group of people, and I've had the fortune of being able to meet some of them, including you, and participate in that, are people who really, really care and really want to make a difference and are all about how can we help people. And it's just a joy. It's really wonderful. Okay, so all right, so I cut you off. So you were you pouring through Andy's notes. You wanted to build something like that. You found Obsidian. How did you like? How did you know that you could customize Obsidian? How did you go from that point to getting to where I'm going to build my own CSS in here and that.
It's probably a function of just joining the community at the right time, really, because I joined slightly before custom CSS was a thing, and I was just looking at this as a tool to put my notes in. I wasn't really looking to customize it all that much, although there was a plugin system on the roadmap, and I thought that could be potential in the future when they get around to that. But then, like, shortly after I joined, they released the update with custom CSS in it, and I'm like, what can I do? I like tinkering around with CSS just generally. That's like one of the favorite parts of my job. So what can I do to tinker around in there? I looked up some custom colors for 80s neon kind of thing, and I built my 80s neon theme as just playing around to see what this is capable of. I built that, and people seem to like that. Even today, people still use that theme as their default.
Mm-hmm.
Surprises me, because I'm like, this is sort of bright and garish. Why do people like this? But people like it, so that's a good thing. And then, so I played around with how I could customize it further, and I made a theme where you could easily customize the colors just by changing a couple of numbers. And then I tried to replicate the clean look of Notion and made the notation theme.
I need to find the person who made red graphite, because I came from, most of my note taking was in Bear, and I love the Bear look and feel. And whoever made red graphite, I need to meet them, because that's my theme.
Yeah, no, it's a really good theme too. I almost stuck with that for a while. I don't have experience with Bear myself, but that was a really good looking theme.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just decided to play around more and see, how far can I push this thing? What can I do different? And I remembered when I was toying around with doing my own thing, I made a sort of sliding panel type interface like Andy Matuschak Mode, and I went and looked up my old code for that and seeing how I could apply just the CSS of that, and ended up making it so that the whole thing would slide sideways and the note panels were fixed, and then played around with making the title bar go onto the side and all that sort of stuff. And
beautiful.
Yeah. That's
absolutely beautiful. All right. So let's, if you'd be willing to share your screen, because what I'd love to do is for those people who are coming to Obsidian, and let's start with non-CSS experts. We come in, we'd love to be able to kind of tweak it a little bit. How hard is that to do? And so if you could kind of share your screen and show us what's involved in tweaking Obsidian to do some basic stuff, and then we'll work up to the amazing sliding panels, Andy Matuschak Mode. That is just so impressive.
All right. So this is a generic lorem ipsum note I play with a lot to see how things are going to look when I change them. So whenever I want to customize it, the first thing I do is open up the developer tools by using Control-Shift-I.
And on a Mac, it generally opens attached to Obsidian, and it looks like, Gordon, you have it detached. Oh, okay, now you just reattached it. Yep.
Yes, so it normally comes up like this, and then you can click up here and you can make it pop out on its own. I work with multiple monitors, so it's normally easier to do that, but I'll leave it docked for this. So this is all the HTML that makes up Obsidian and all the CSS classes and everything that apply to it. So if we wanted to do something like change the colors, you can see I'm in dark mode. It's got a theme dark that's got all the colors defined here, like this. So if I wanted to, say, change the background primary color, The dev tools have this nice thing with a nice little color picker, and I can make it red, which is horrible. I could just adjust things.
See, that's one of the challenges of being a designer, is that you know exactly what looks good and what doesn't look good. And for us mere mortals, and I when I published Andy Matuschak's notes inside of Obsidian, and I first had that live, Gordon was the first one to respond to me and say, "Your font looks terrible, Anthony. You have to change it." And the funny thing is that to me, the font looked just fine. And then when I changed it to Gordon's recommendation, it did look indeed much better. So thank you for that.
Sorry. So that's changed that background color. But when I'm editing things in the DevTools here, that's only temporary. If I reload this now, Control R reloads the page, and then it all goes back to exactly how it was. So to actually customize CSS, you have to make sure you go into your settings, make sure the custom CSS plugin is on, and then it will read the obsidian.css file that is in your root folder. So I've opened up my obsidian.css in I use Visual Studio Code to edit it because it's got nice syntax highlighting and stuff. But you can use whatever you like.
And Visual Studio Code is a free tool, which is it's one of the most impressive tools from Microsoft.
Yeah, it's actually really nice. But you could just use any old text editor, and even Notepad or whatever would work. So if we look here, we had the class here for theme dark, and we changed the background primary. So if I change that again to this nice little dark purple color, somewhere around there, that'll be fine. And then we can basically just copy this to the clipboard and paste it in my Obsidian CSS. And then save that. And that will have updated this. You can see that this is crossed out now because the style tag from the Obsidian CSS is overriding it. So now if I reload the page, then it stays purple.
That's cool. And so you don't have to copy all of the original CSS. All you're putting in your local CSS file are just the changes that you want to make to the theme that's in there.
Yeah. Which is really handy because there's a lot of CSS, and most of it, especially if you're getting started, won't make a lot of sense. The easiest way to get started is with these, the theme dark and the theme light, and just playing with these colors and adjusting them how you like them. But yeah, there's so much more you can do. Like here, looking at this, these on this screen, because it's all squished together, the block quotes seem a bit skinny to me. So what I can do is I can select, I can hover over here, and then I see block quote there. Click on that, and it's showing me here block quote, and it's got that orange area I want to shrink. So I think that's the margin. I know what I'm looking at. But if you go to computed, then there's this nice little thing that says this is how wide it is, and then it's got this much padding around it, and then it's got this much border and this much margin. So you can highlight it like that and see what everything is. So if I want to reduce that, what I want to do is I go back to styles, and I want to see up here what is applying to that, what class is applying to that. And I will copy that, paste that into my CSS. And I wanted to change the margin. It was at 40, I'll halve it. Side. See that shifting already.
Yep.
And then I also make that. And now it's got more room. And
the cool thing is that it loads it live the CSS. You don't have to restart Obsidian. You just save your CSS file in Visual Studio Code or whatever editor you're using, and it automatically applies it.
Yeah, it's really cool that it does that. Another instance of the developers going above and beyond what they need to do. So yeah, basically every theme I've made and every tweak I've done, it's been a matter of poking at it with the select element tool, seeing what currently applies to it, and then applying my own thing to match.
And so tell us the difference. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
The difference between changing CSS when you're in the editor versus when you're in preview mode. Because you can change both of those, right?
Yeah, so you change both of those separately because the way it's built, the preview mode is rendered completely differently to the way edit mode is rendered differently due to the way it's being developed. And the editor uses a thing called code mirror, which has a lot of syntax highlighting classes and things like that. So if I were to inspect element on, say, the header, you can see that if I inspect element over here, there is just a header, which is H1. But if I inspect element on code mirror, there's a lot more going on. So we've got a line here, and in that line, it's got presentation, and in there, it's got the formatting for the header, and then it's got header, and then for some reason, header space, and more header. And you can see that's header 1, all these other classes that I don't even understand what most of them are. It's got this class under it for spell error because it doesn't recognize lorem. And that means you can do things like, I can look at this thing that has like, I'm looking here, it's got the formatting. There's a bit of CSS that's been floating around at the moment to sort of make the editor a bit more WYSIWYG. And a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of that boils down to just this CM formatting class. And then I select save. And then all of that syntax just goes away.
Yeah.
Obviously, that makes it very hard to then edit that because it's gone. And there's ways you can bring that back. Like if I look up here, it's got there's a class somewhere for active line, I think. So you can say not if it's this on not an active line and things like that. That's getting pretty deep into this.
Yeah.
There.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Let's remove that for now because that's gonna. It's also something to watch out for because if I want to change the size of headers for whatever, I can see that this class applies to Markdown Preview H1, and I can change the font size to really big. But then that doesn't change that one.
Yep.
So you've also then got to go check what applies to that, and we're looking at CM header 1 here. Copy that as well. Actually, I should copy that from over here, so it's got all the right things on it. And then I can put a comma. So this rule applies to both of them, and now they're both big.
Yep. Cool.
So most of everything I'm doing is poking it with the inspect element, seeing what applies, copy pasting, tweaking numbers until it works. Until it looks good.
So so a lot of themes have been made already. How do you find a theme? How do you choose a theme? How do you change a theme?
Yeah, so the easiest way is just to go into the settings. If you've got the CSS plugin on, you'll have a section for community themes. And you can see everyone's theme there in a random order. And
I heard there's a cool 80s theme in here.
Yes, so this is the first theme I worked on. And if I click use, that'll warn me that it's going to override my custom CSS file. So any changes I've made are going to get wiped. So override that. And now I'm in my custom 80s theme. If I go back to my Obsidian CSS, you can see it's got all my custom CSS in there that I've been working on for this theme. Actually, this nice little thing I put in last that makes it look like a CRT. I'm not sure if this is going to come out very well in the video, but we'll try. So you get scan lines and it flickering and blurring.
Look at that. That really takes you back to the 80s.
And this is the kind of stuff I love playing with and like making it look cool. But in reality, that's not very practical. It's hard to read the highlighted part. And it's just, after a while, if you're trying to type in it, it just... Turn all that stuff off. But yeah, you can see basically what I've done here is exactly the same, where if I poke at one of these things, you can see that a quote is put as that color in the editor. In the preview, we've got the block quotes like I made before, but I've put the blue shadow on it. And I've changed the background modifier border color. You can see all the colors that I've changed down here. And all of that is in here, various forms, so you can poke at it. So here's all the colors that I changed. Specific colors for the ribbon and active title bar and things like that.
And you can change anything. So when you load a theme, you get the local CSS file. You can tweak it to however you want. So if you want to make changes to someone else's theme, you just select a theme, and then you make those changes to that local obsidian.css file, and you get your tweaks right on top of it.
Yeah, and that really is the best way to get started. Is just pick someone else's theme that you like, that's close to what you want, and then start messing with colors, messing with fonts, messing with all that sort of stuff. And you very quickly make it your own. And that seems to be what most of the community is doing. Like, we have all these great community themes that look amazing, but most people have their own variations of them.
Yeah.
Then you get into the advanced, tricky stuff. Like in my notation theme, what I've actually done is, instead of having that title bar up the top with the title in it, it's sort of in line with the text and you can scroll past it. And that's getting more to the advanced CSS side of things. But I have a thing in here for document header.
Look how well you document your code. That's impressive.
That was actually from someone else on the community. I can't remember who now. It might have been Class. Said that he was doing it for his themes and that some people were doing it for theirs. And I'm like, that's great. That way I can easily find it without having to keep scrolling until I find the bit. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here that a lot of it won't make sense. A lot of it hardly makes sense to me. But it's a matter of, again, like going in here, poking at it with the inspect element, playing around with some stuff. So this is a view header, and then looking at what's in there and changing all its classes and its sizes and its how it interacts with the rest of the document. Just using these.
So cool.
And then, yeah, you end up with making it look and act completely different. Other people have made all sorts of tweaks to have the sidebars auto-hide and only appear when you're hovering on them.
Yep.
There's like a super minimal mode where like nothing, there's no UI until you hover over it. There's some really, really cool stuff.
All right. How about you? When you're doing your regular work in Obsidian and you're not showing off for us CSS mortals, what do you normally use?
So I use a variation on the notation theme, actually. I have created oops. I've been playing with themes a lot, so I've got a lot of stuff going on. But I have this...
oh, you have compiled CSS in there. Look at that.
I have compiled CSS. So I've been using SAS, which is a sort of compiled CSS that has a whole bunch of extra things on top of CSS. And I've got some editor mix-ins, and I changed my color mix-ins, and I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on here, and a little button that I click that builds it all up from scratch again, so I can go play with other people's themes, and then click this button, it recompiles my CSS, and this should in a moment turn purple.
Yep.
So I've got a... That's
pretty. That's nice.
I spend a lot of my time in the editor, so I've been playing around with a lot of the editor plugins, so I can click on here and it's got the hash next to it when I'm typing, but then I click off it and it just has
nice.
One. I got icons going on in the file manager.
Oh, look at that. Yep. Very nice.
All these little tweaks, half of them are just to see if I could, and then if they look good, I keep them around. If they don't, they go on the forum and someone else finds them.
Oh, I can't wait to read this article. It looks good.
This is also the article I published on my
your blog.
Publish site.
Yep. On your Obsidian Publish site. I haven't seen that yet. Why don't you? That'd be worth showing us as well as how you tweak CSS for that, because it's a little bit different.
Yeah. So if I just a sec.
So one of the premium features of Obsidian is the ability to publish your notes, which basically is making them live to the world. And so what Gordon is pulling up for us here are his live published notes that anyone can access them if they go to publish.obsidian.md/death-au.
And so, yeah, this is this exact same note that I've been playing with and figuring that out. So there were a couple of little things I wanted to change in here based on what it looked like compared to what I had. So if I go back here, if you go to Publish Changes, when you have the Publish plugin turned on, where I change stuff, you can see that I've published my Obsidian CSS, and that hasn't changed. So that's exactly what I've got in here has been published. Most of that code is actually to customize the UI and therefore mostly useless on the website. And for now, I've published it anyway, but I plan to at some point strip all that out and just use the publish.css file that you can do separately, which at the moment I've been using to try and play with fonts, actually. Customize stuff. So there were a few things that the padding was a bit off on the website, and I've changed them and republished. So I don't think I need that stuff anymore.
So the cool thing is you can control separately or have even additional further tweaks to what's on your live publish site in addition to what's in your app.
Yeah. So if I look at my publish site at the moment, let's say I want to change. Let's bring up the inspector for this as well. So let's say I want to change the font size of a block quote. Font size here is 1.2 EM. Say I want to make it back to the same size as everything else. So then I'll put this in my publish.css. And I'll say font size. Oops. If I could type. I'll save that. Now, I'll just refresh this so I can see what it looks like bigger. So now I go to Obsidian, I go to my publish. I have made changes to my publish CSS, so I publish that. That uploads it to the website. And I might have to clear the cache in my browser. So if I go back to my browser and I hold Shift and refresh, I believe it is, then it should reload from the cache, which it hasn't.
Yeah, I noticed it takes a little bit. When I made a change last time, it took a little bit. There it is.
There. Yeah. Sometimes it takes a bit to come through. And then there's also, it's generally cached for a little bit, so you might have to clear your cache to get it to work. But yeah, so now that's the same size as the rest of it.
All right. So one thing that a lot of people have asked questions about back in Obsidian, how do you add color to your graph? Yes.
So with the graph, the way the graph is rendered is completely differently to the rest of Obsidian, and you can't really change it with CSS. But the developers have been really good with the custom CSS. So this is just a canvas. There's nothing you can do with it. But the developers have been really good with custom CSS, and they've created classes. Let's see if I can find them. Geographic colors. It's nice having that index. So they've got these classes that they've set up specifically for adjusting the color and opacity of the parts of the graph view. I believe there's some weird internal workings where it like renders that out somewhere and then picks those colors and then uses that in the graph, because you can't actually use CSS. But so this is the color fill for the general nodes. There's also now special ones for unresolved, so notes that don't exist yet. As you can see, I've got a ton of notes that don't exist yet that I just link to. Specific colors for lines, for the text when you zoom in and you see the text, or when you hover over it and you see different text. So the height, I've got that as purple. Then there's colors for the attachments and the tags. I made the tags stand out yellow. I'm still playing with this and I'm not sure how I want to color my graph yet, but yeah, so there's all those classes set up specifically for customizing the graph, which is
and you bring up a great point, which is another thing about, we talked earlier about the ecosystem and the community, but the developers are very responsive to what the community is asking for.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, I think they thought of that ahead of time too. They had the custom CSS plugin. They saw how popular that was, and they're like, oh, well, we need a way to customize the graph. Whereas, most developers would just be like, we have a graph now.
Yeah. Check.
Yep. Next thing. Check.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they are really paying attention to the community, which is really good.
Yeah. This is awesome what you showed so far. So show us kind of Andy's mode.
I made Andy's mode as a scroll sideways thing at first. So if I bring up this. So originally, I think all I'd done is this. So originally all I'd done is I didn't make many modifications at all. I just made it so that if I open links, if I hold Control and open it, they sort of build up next to each other as normal.
Yep.
But then if I open more of them, they would open to the side and stack on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that got pretty popular pretty quickly. But one thing Andy's notes did really well is they showed the title on the side. So I wanted to replicate that. And that was the tricky part. But yeah, after a lot of fiddling around, I did get that to work. And so now we've got these nice little titles.
So beautiful. Mm-hmm. Love it.
Yeah, they scroll across like that, stack up really nicely.
How did you write the code for... Did you do the published version of this as well?
I didn't actually.
Okay.
The developers saw how popular Andy's mode was, and they looked up how I did it and basically replicated it on theirs.
Got it. Okay.
So now if I go to the publish side and I make the thing big enough, then again I can open these. I can go open these links.
Yep.
Open these links, and they stack up like that, and scroll across, and they've got nice spines that appear and disappear as you scroll past them, which is something I wanted to do with my CSS, but my skills with CSS weren't good enough. And the developers have done that with extra JavaScript and stuff.
Yeah, right. It makes it a little bit easier when you have a little bit more control like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they are working on plugins at some point. And at that point, I plan to retire this as a CSS file and start making a plugin specifically for it.
Yeah.
Because then that'll give me a bit more control.
For sure.
Because there are some things here that don't quite work properly. Well, the hovers are working fine, but sometimes they were in a different position. The developers fixed that recently.
Yeah, that was a recent fix. Yep.
When I switch panes, it just highlights the current pane, but doesn't actually transition to it, whereas on the website, you click on it and it goes there.
Yeah, that's cool. In fact, now that people are discovering this on the publish site, the folding panes, I see comments coming in on Twitter asking for additional features and how it can be embedded in the editor. And I actually shared your forum post, if you want to pull that up, for anyone who wants to do exactly what you see Gordon. He wrote a post in the forum that has lots of details behind it. And if you go to the forum and you search for Andy Matuschak, I think you'll find it just with that. Or Andy Mode, right?
Yep. See, requests for putting it into the core.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah, the opening line of that is pretty much how I made it.
Right.
When I should have been working, I was just fiddling with the CSS and making this work instead. So, yeah, basically this code is here on the forums. All you have to do is copy that as it is there. Copy that as in there. Into your Obsidian verse. And then that'll apply to here. And the way I've made it, unless the theme that you're working with is doing something weird with headings, it should basically work in any other theme. So if I change my theme, go back to my 80s theme, and I use that, that'll override all my custom CSS. So these are all open side by side and really skinny. Hard to work with, and there's multiple. But then if I copied that forum post, I go right down to the bottom of my Obsidian CSS that's got all the 80 stuff in it, paste it at the bottom, and then suddenly I have Andy's mode in my theme.
Beautiful. Very, very nice.
Scroll back and forth between those nodes.
Yeah. Do you work in Andy mode?
Sometimes, but rarely. I'm actually finding it better for my own mental state if I only have a couple of notes open at a time.
Yeah, me too.
I do think having it as a plugin where it's easier to switch between them might help a lot.
Right.
That. Because then they're more like tabs in a browser. At the moment, I'm finding it hard to actually work in Andy mode.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us, Gordon. What you've done, what you created has been so cool as well. That all the help that you're doing on the forums, helping people out.
Yes, the community is pretty great. Normally, I feel like the job of a moderator is to keep people in line and keep the peace, but the community is so great that I don't really have to do any moderating at all, basically. And to that end, I sort of feel like a bit of a fraud being called moderator. But yeah, I like helping people, and I like, especially when it comes to the custom CSS stuff. Even in that Andy's Mode thread, there's like a few posts later down where people are like, I wish it would work differently. And I'm like, here you go, it works differently now. The community is great.
And this has been great, getting to know you a little bit and getting to see how you work and how you came to Obsidian and what you put together. And thank you for all that you're doing for the community. Thank you for helping people. Thank you for building these themes. Thank you for giving the critical feedback on Andy's Mode on my published site that you did, because it looks way better thanks to you. And yeah, thanks for everything you're doing, Gordon. It's a pleasure meeting you, and it's a pleasure being a moderator with you and being part of this community and on this journey with you.
It's been fun. I enjoy it very much.